Welcome to the Off Leash Podcast with Dr. Pete. I'm your co-host Molly, and we're so glad that you joined us for today's show. Remember, we're not here to say what you want us to say. We are here to be an advocate for your pet. Pete rarely says what people want him to say.
No. Well, I try to be truthful and not hurtful, but sometimes it's truthful and hurtful are all in the same sentence. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
So sometimes being truthful means
hurting
some feelings.
Sometimes I look at a patient, and I'll go, we get to the end of the appointment and I'm like, I haven't really had to criticize anything you've done here. So that's my way of telling you everything. You're doing everything about the way you're doing what we expect you to do. You're showing up with your dog not too fat, not too skinny. I had one yesterday who was too skinny. I don't see that very often.
Really?
And
most of the time it's overweight.
Both these dogs had hair on them, and I could tell, when we get done with them, I threw them each a treat, and they each caught it very well. They caught it because they were looking for more. All of a sudden, they were really interested in me, and they'd lost weight since the last time. But I think he had done that on purpose, but they were kind of long-haired, so he didn't realize how thin they were. So I showed him how to go over the rib cage with your hand, and so you can kind of see. If you got a Vizsla or something, real short-haired dog.
You can tell very easily.
You can
tell
the
if they're
red from
skinny.
Across the room, but not with his dogs, no.
Oh, good to know. So we are going to be going over an interesting topic today, kind of controversial amongst Instagram influencers, I should say, because a lot of Instagram influencers get online and they talk about, I got my certification as a nutritionist.
Yeah, it's a short course of sorts. Yeah.
And so they post all this long form information about how to feed your dog and what's a complete and balanced diet and what they know or what they think that they know when they might not have the entire full picture.
So do you know why that is?
Why?
Here's what happens. So in our place, we would have room techs, what we refer to as room techs, and they're not really technicians. I mean, they understand the technical aspects of what we're trying to do there. They would comb your dog or your cat and see if there's fleas on them, take the temperature, take a brief history, and then we walk in the room. So they're the room techs. Now, sometimes, excuse me, but sometimes it's nice if they could talk about the food because I'm going to be doing something else.
Yeah.
And so sometimes they have these little programs where they get a book and they read the book and then they take a test. If they pass the test, they get a certification that they did this. Now, obviously, they're going to take the test with the book in hand. So it's really not a test, if you got all the answers before the.
You still have to look.
Yeah, you still have to look, and you have to write it down sometimes or pick the right
answer.
Pick the right answer, and you have to think about it. Sometimes when you think about it.
So is this like a multiple choice thing?
Yeah, sometimes
or is this
they
like
are.
a long form?
Sometimes they are. Most of the time they are because they have to grade it, and then they're going to grade it. And they don't want to have you.
I'm going to look this up. How difficult it is to pass.
Well, I think you guys. I think Ben did this at one time. In here, and it was a. It took him a week or two to do it, but at least he had some idea what he was talking about. And well, I'm not going to send him to nutrition school and have him get a bachelor in science in nutrition because it's going to take him 4 years. It won't take him 4 years. It'll take him 2 years because he's already got a lot of college already. He's already got a degree already. So that's what we're looking about. That's what we're talking about. Sometimes we say some people refer themselves as nutritionists. They are trained in nutrition. They're not a nutritionist. They are trained in nutrition. They've had some training in nutrition. So what happens when I was in school, I was an animal husbandry major, so I had to take a nutrition class. It was a gas. It was a German guy doing the thing, and his last name was Warner. He was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And he was a good teacher because he made it fun. And so when I got out of there, I had kind of a sense about minerals and vitamins and protein and carbohydrates and calories.
It gives you a good idea.
Yeah. It gives you a good idea on how you're doing and everything.
Yeah.
And I can't remember everything about the class, but I remember it was fun and I felt more accomplished at nutrition than when I started. Now, in animal husbandry, I got more nutritional training than I got in veterinary school.
Right.
So in veterinary school, you don't get an awful lot of nutritional training.
No, I was just looking it up, some of the nutrition classes that you can take. Some of them are long form, like 2 years. Some of them are very short form, like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's a very hit or miss, but everyone that I'm reading about online, it says that they're relatively easy.
Yeah. Well, they make it so you can get the certificate, and usually you have to pay for it. I think there's an entry fee or an administration fee or whatever you want to call it.
It also says to typically be a dog nutritionist, you have to have a bachelor's degree in animal science.
Right. To be a dog, to have a degree in that. So here's what happens. So I went to veterinary school. So you go in, you take the physiology class, you take the pharmacy class, you take the anatomy class, you do all this stuff you're supposed to do. And then about your third year, you start going out in the clinics and doing things and, practicing surgeries. And then in your last year, you get to meet clients and take histories, and somebody kind of walks you along through the whole thing, and you make mistakes, and they correct the mistakes as you go along. And sometimes I refer to this as like it's calisthenics to what a football game is. You got to do jumping jacks and push-ups and stretching. And then once you've gotten done with school, now you've stretched and done the calisthenics. Now you're going to be licensed to go out and look at people's pets. Now, if you're smart, you find somebody who knows what they're doing, and you work for them, at least for a short period of time. And they will mentor you as to, how to do this, how to do this.
Treat certain things.
And if you're lucky, if somebody,
things.
I think it's important that somebody goes out and works with somebody that has integrity. And then what will happen is somebody will make a decision that, they kind of think the nutrition thing's kind of cool. So then what they'll go back to school, and they'll try to get boarded in nutrition. And that's what they do. And some will be specialists in large animals. Some will actually be specialists in pigs, and some people will be specialists in poultry. And so you'll have all that sort of stuff going on. And then what they do is they go out and then they start, we refer to what we do as practice, and they start practicing. Yeah. So we have nutritionists that do consultations and with clients, and sometimes they're used to seeing patients, a lot of patients, and they have some idea what's going on. Sometimes they leave nutrition school and they really kind of delve into what would I call research, and sometimes they're involved in the research, and sometimes they'll even sign contracts to work for companies like Purina or Mars or Blue Buffalo or somebody like that. So they have a nutritionist on staff, but I think one of the things that we haven't ever talked about is sometimes you read something and they say whoever makes this diet has to be a veterinarian with a PhD in nutrition. Okay. That's what they'll talk about.
But all these Instagram people are just nutritionists. Is it nutritionist or nutritionalist?
Nutritionist.
Okay.
Nutritionist, yeah.
They're just a nutritionist. They're like a certified
they're sort of
self-appointed.
Yeah, they've got a little plaque, and it's fine. The fact that they've gone out and made themselves knowledgeable about something, it's good.
But it does not mean that you can go plastering facts on the internet.
Well, you can play golf, but you may not play golf on Sunday afternoon on TV. You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
Yeah. So,
that's a way to,
Yeah. So
you might not be taking golf lessons from someone that just plays for leisure versus Tiger Woods.
Yeah. Well, and that's what you could say. Yeah, you could say, well, I'm a golfer. I kick everybody's ass on this little 9-hole course over here in Burr Oak, Michigan, or something like that. I'm not sure there's a 9-hole course in Burr Oak, Michigan, but you get the idea. It's a small town. And so either you really get this, and really this is like a lot of things that you start to develop an interest and you get better and better and better and better and better at it.
Right.
Little things. I like to do dermatology. I like to do ear infections. I like to do skin allergies and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And I kind of take pride in the fact that, I wasn't very good at it to begin with. I've gotten better and better and better and better at it. So, like sometimes you might come into our place and they'll say, well, if you got a lameness problem, you want to see Dr. Van Rijswijk. But you got a skin problem, maybe you want to see Dr. Van Branken. He probably does more of the skin stuff here. Dr. Van Rijswijk does all the musculoskeletal stuff. So, and it doesn't mean Dr. Van Rijswijk can't look at bad ears. He can.
No, it's just a
and it
preference
doesn't mean Pete Van Branken can't look at a dog with a bad leg.
Yeah.
But lots of times they're like, I know exactly what it is. I know exactly what it should do. And then sometimes it's like, hey, Ron, why don't you take a look at this? What do you think of this x-ray? And so we'll bounce this stuff off each other. So that's what we do. We've developed our own interest in it within the spectrum of things we do at a veterinary clinic.
Okay.
And that's what nutritionists do. So in my mind, a PhD nutritionist that's a DVM, in a perfect world, I would think they'd work 1 to 2 days a week at seeing patients and 2 to 3 days a week at doing nutrition stuff.
Okay.
I think that gives you a leg up. You kind of understand, you kind of understand what it's like to hit major league pitching. You're used to, and then you'll start having these things you become very proficient at. And so the nutritionist is one thing. So like our dog food is designed by a veterinarian, practicing veterinarian, a PhD nutritionist who is not a veterinarian, and a food scientist who worked at one of the big pet food companies at one time before he retired. So we have sort of that level of expertise across three people. And when we when we sit in a room and do this, then we get it pretty much right because nobody's allowed to make a mistake because there's an expert in the room about whatever we're talking about.
And you're all coming to a similar conclusion.
Yeah. And
that's fair.
Yeah. And in fact, I was at some place and a nutritionist said, she made the comment, well, she sees a lot of dogs with chicken allergies. And I'm like, yeah, I think there are dogs with chicken allergies. I wouldn't say you see a lot of them, but I mean, if you had 1,000 people feeding a beef food and 1,000 people feeding a chicken food,
you'd see more allergies to chicken than...
No, you'd see more allergies to beef than you would to chicken. But since there's a lot more foods with chicken in it than there are beef, so there's kind of a couple ways to look at it.
Skewed.
So 1 out of every 7 dogs is eating a chicken. Well, is eating a beef diet, and 5 out of every 7 is eating a chicken diet.
Right.
So the total number of dogs may be kind of close to each other, but when you look at in the scheme of things, and then of course then taking the history is everything. It's like I'll talk to people.
History is necessary.
Take 20 minutes and spend with people, and all of a sudden at minute 17 or minute 18, they start telling me something their kid's doing with the diet, that his mother's gotten him eating cottage cheese, and when she turns around, he feeds the dog cottage cheese. Well, that's a milk product. In fact, I see the other day on TV, Rob Lowe was talking about he gives his dog cottage cheese. Hey, that's fine if your dog's not allergic to milk, but milk is a fairly common thing they're allergic to.
So there could be an allergy happening.
Here's the deal. Old Rob Lowe doesn't know much about that. He was into, he's been in a lot of movies, but he's been in a lot of movies, and his deal is not dog nutrition, but he's appointed himself. Katherine Heigl's the same way. Rachel Ray's the same way.
Yeah.
There's all these people that are celebrities that have anointed themselves and to
think that they can say what should or should not be in dog food.
That's right. Yep. And I've been doing this probably, I don't know how old Rob Lowe is, but I've been doing this. He was probably in 3rd grade when I got started doing what I was doing, or maybe 2nd grade. I don't know how many years he spent in 2nd grade, but let's just assume it was only 1. Okay. Smart guy. But shouldn't be feeding cottage cheese to your dog, and he wouldn't be bright enough to figure out that the cottage cheese was causing a problem with their ears. And he wouldn't, and nor should I expect him to be. It's not his thing. It's just somebody else's thing. And I wouldn't expect to be a very good actor because I've never had acting lessons.
It's not your thing.
That's not my thing.
So on Instagram, there's kind of like this, or I should say social media, there's kind of this big divide between nutritionists and veterinarians, because veterinarians are saying there's not a good enough, I guess, basis of nutritionists to claim that they have enough information to give people information about what they should feed their dog.
Yeah,
then they're saying that veterinarians should not get information on feeding the dog because they barely touch on nutritional information in vet school.
Yeah, except you have a lot of conversations about this with clients, and so yeah, you're taught, but you're
the average veterinarian.
You're self-taught. You're self-taught.
Yes.
Well, I don't know how self-taught some clients are. We know a lot about it because we did a lot of studies with ear infections, and those predominantly end up to be food allergies. And then about, if you look at 100 dogs with bad ears, 30 of them got some GI stuff going on.
So are you saying the self-taught people are the nutritionists?
I'm saying the self-taught people, what you really have to do is you have to put the self-taught people, you have to put experience with education. And what I'm suggesting is it's better if you put if the nutritionist practices 1 or 2 days a week and kind of gets a feel for what the hell's going on. And a lot of them do and some of them don't. And so I see a lot of that is that, they can give a lecture, but they don't know what we do.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things that, it's just kind of, the people who play golf 3 times a summer aren't very good at playing golf. If you play every week, maybe you're a little better playing golf. Still not probably going to be playing on Saturday or Sunday afternoons on TV, but that's the thing you got to know. And if you had a dog that had a nutrition problem, you and I would have to sort that out together because it's a Molly problem and I will help you with your Molly problem.
Not a Pete problem.
Yeah. So really basically I'm teaching you how to play a card game.
So if people wanted to go out and get nutritionist information, where is a good, reliable source? Because what I'm saying is there's people going out and getting nutritionist classes and like saying I'm a certified nutritionist. And then there's veterinarians that are saying, no, you should not listen to those people.
Let's look at the industry as a whole. For the most part, the dog food industry is trying to trick the clients into believing they're getting something really good for their dog based on what is in the label. And sometimes they are, and sometimes they're not. And that's the thing, that's the art form, is figuring it out. Now, I'll tell you that who you can't fool the cat or the dog. That's who you can't fool. Mm-hmm. Because if that food does not like them, it will be, they'll be gassy, they'll be vomiting bile at 4:00 in the morning, all that sort of thing. So in the end, it's you have mostly dogs at this point in your life. And so it would be the veterinarian, myself, you, the owner, and the dog. So you got to put all three of those things together and come up with a conclusion as to why something's happening. Mm-hmm. So, and really what really happens, you have to do food trials. So a lot of times you might have a client that came in that's on 3 different things. And really for the most part, here's the important part, is that you start making sure that the treats aren't part of the problem also. Because so many people feed table food and they have 5 different kind of dog treats and all that sort of stuff. So most of the time, if I'm going to do a feeding trial, I take all the table food out, I take all the treats out. And in fact, I've always been a big advocate for the apples, bananas, carrots thing.
Yep.
That's our ABC treats, yeah. So apparently, for the most part, God doesn't contaminate any of that stuff. And so if you buy an apple, there's just an apple in there. If it's a carrot, it's just a carrot in there. If it's a banana, it's just a banana in there. So if it's an ice cube, it's usually just water.
Yeah.
And so those are things that don't have much protein in, not liable to cause much of a problem. So if I told people you can't feed anything in the way of treats, people would rebel. So we find something they like that we know is safe and not likely to cause any adverse food reactions. So then you have to feed it for a month and then see how your dog does. And since the veterinarian does these things all the time, the veterinarian understands more about that patient than a nutritionist would that designed the diet. So and everything's going to be different. So the veterinarian has a better idea of what dogs tolerate, what they don't tolerate, what they do well on, what they don't do well on. But the client has to help them figure it out. That's where the part where the nutritionist isn't in the room when this conversation goes on.
But they're posting online about this is what you need to feed your dog. You need to give your dogs omega toppers on their food. Maybe like quail eggs is another one that I've been seeing. I've been seeing a lot of like supplements that you can add.
So here's the deal.
A lot of feel-good shit.
Here's what the nutritionists online don't know. They don't know what goes on with that dog. And the word always and never, and I see that a lot, sometimes from these self-appointed nutritionists, always and never, that they think that should be used. Always and never in our business should never be used.
Except for right now when you said never.
Yeah, except when I'm telling you what not to do. Don't use the word always and don't use the word never. So, but I think that's the big thing. You can take what a nutritionist says online, and you can read about it, and you can in your mind sort of justify whether they could be right or wrong. In the end, a PhD nutritionist is going to give you better information.
But also the problem with vets is like a lot of vet offices you go into, they're going to push shit like Science Diet and Royal Canin because that's the vet formulated diets.
Yeah, those are the vet formula. They're the ones that, so those, just for the record, those are the 2 diets that are prescription diets frequently.
Yeah.
Okay. So lots of times if you had a kidney dog, a dog with extensive kidney disease, they put them on the kidney diet, which was actually designed. It had less phosphorus, it had less protein. They probably got that all figured out. What the protein source they use, is that dog going to tolerate that protein source? We don't know, but we'll know after we feed it for a few days or a few weeks.
Right.
And so
at the end of the day, rely on your veterinarian, rely on the dog.
And rely on yourself. I don't think that happens enough. I don't think relying on yourself happens enough. And I look at clients in the eye and go, you know whose problem this is?
Yours.
And that's what they look at me and go, it's your. Well, they think, well, this is your thing to fix. No. I'll show you how to play the game. I mean, this wouldn't be any different than me teaching you how to play pinochle.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go play pinochle for a couple of years and you come back and kick my ass playing pinochle. And that's it because you're playing a lot more. And I don't want to play anymore because your mother doesn't play it. So I don't have anybody to play with. But that's the big thing is that nutritionists, there's degrees of nutritionists. And just because you took a short course doesn't mean you understand everything.
So definitely question the qualifications before you take any type of nutrition information online.
I think one of the take-home points is here that is sometimes the novice nutritionist, they have an opinion based on one dog or two dogs they've had. And that, quite frankly, I always tell people, I hate to break your bubble, my dear, or sir, I hate to break your bubble, but this is not statistically significant. What you've decided is not statistically significant. It's all based on one or two patients.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be based on hundreds of patients. And then in a veterinarian's case, it'd be based on thousands of patients.
And if it's a veterinary nutritionist.
Yep. It's hard to say how many, it's hard to say whether they've got it right or not. Every once in a while, you get a PhD nutritionist, they'll ask you, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? And those are good people right there because they understand that we can help them and we understand that they can help us.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have a veterinary nutritionist I talk to as a friend of mine. And you know what we do? We get on and we have about a 20-minute conversation. We pump each other for facts and information. And then one of us gets called to lunch or dinner. And so then we stop the conversation.
Yeah.
But then we wait another month before we pump each other for more stuff. But that's the way you learn. And then he would tell me something and I would go back to the practice. I need to prove it or disprove it.
Right.
And I might go back to him 6 months later and go,
this is not accurate at all.
Yeah, I don't think this is right, my friend. This is not right, I don't believe. And here's why. And then he'd have to be, and if he's a good guy, and he is, he would listen to what I have to say, and then he'd go back and prove or disprove it to me. And in fact, this nutritionist I'm talking about, I've had some dealings with, and he practices, I think, a few days a month. Which I think is outstanding. I mean, now he understands what we're going through.
Right. So at the end of the day, trust yourself, your dog.
Well, yeah, you can work with, you can listen to what the nutritionists say, and I think I've told you this before, but every once in a while, we'll teach each other stuff and we'll learn things. But just remember, it has to be more than one patient to be significant. And I think that's the important thing here. To listen to what people say, prove or disprove it. And I've gone to meetings before where people are writing stuff down, and I'm like, ooh, this is wrong. This isn't right.
They'll figure it out when they go back to the vet clinic.
I went to a meeting one time not too long ago, and that's what I told somebody. I said, this woman just put on a program on bad ears and stuff, and there was a young lady next to me, and I said, you know what? I see you writing everything down, she said. And she says, yes, I am. I said, well, good, because she's 100% right. This is the best presentation I've ever seen on this topic right here. So she's nailed it. But don't take my word for it. What she said, go home and prove or disprove it to Sarah for yourself. That's what you got to do. Prove or disprove it to yourself.
Okay. I like that. All right. You ready to wrap it up for today?
I am.
All right. Let's get some outro music going. Well, guys, we sure appreciate you guys listening along with us today. We hope that we've been able to share some information that will help you love your animals as much as they love you. Don't forget, always treat the treatable, prevent the preventable, and we will catch you on the next one.
Good job.